Alright, well, time for the review. So the way I'm going to do this is by first talking about each individual chapter, as in tape, the overall tapes themselves, and then the game itself. So of course, allow me to start with a collective of the tapes. So the only two that stick out to me, particularly, are the first one and the last one. The one with Virginia and the one with Lucas. As I said, the one with Lucas had my favorite environment. And I've already explained why it's my favorite environment, so I'm not going to go over it again, but it had my favorite environment. But it also had those iron giant chases, which are my least favorite aspect of probably the whole game. It's not that the chases themselves were what really took it down for me, because two reasons. Like I said, one, I found out the method of being able to avoid the lasers in the first place so you don't really die. And secondly, there were pills to enhance your stats. Now, I didn't really get these pills because I honestly just didn't care to look at through every morsel of every level, nor try to find every pill. So I missed out on boosting stats that I could have. I'm not blind to that. The chases themselves aren't why I take it down. It's because of that one chase where there's one save at like a gate, and then you have to run all the way back to that gate, the other gate, every single time. And that's time consuming, especially when you die again and again and again like I did. So that's the reason why. Even like the second one, I did die a few times too. Don't count the same way because there was actually a reasonable save. It was right there. Now, as far as which one was honestly my favorite though, it would be Virginia's tape. The very first one with the Homomart level. Because I don't know why, I kind of sympathize with Virginia more so than the others, even though hers had technically the least connection to Meyer Pharmaceuticals and Agent Rainbow, which of course it would, because she's the first one they're trying to do. They're revealing shit to you incrementally. So, of course it would be. But she was my favorite one, honestly. Just the whole thing. The way you go about everything, and the look on her face when you first see her, the whole deal. That was my favorite one. My second favorite one would be probably Lucas's, and then it would be Alan Shore's, and then finally would be Max Nygaard. I liked Max Nygaard's the least overall. I dislike the Iron Giant chase, that one, because of how long it takes to get to the thing. But overall though, Max Nygaard's is definitely my least favorite. Now, I assumed that his would be the most action heavy because of the anger, but it wasn't, because let's be honest here, Agent Rainbow's tape was also pretty action heavy, and so was even Lucas's, because they introduced all those new enemies and all that. Which I figured would be a thing just for Max's, but I was wrong about that. But they did provide good ways to beat them though. I mean, you have the pistol, which works against regular guys, you have the flare gun, and then you also have the radio. My only issue is that I think they should have told you straight up when you pick up the radio. If they did, then maybe they did, but I don't remember them doing it. Telling you that for those big guys, that you can actually hurt them with the radio and kill them with it. Because that provided, it saves you so much ammo on the big guys. So for each individual level though, I did like the Homomart for Virginia. I liked Virginia herself. And overall, I liked Jorge, the stuffed guys. It was probably the darkest atmosphere of the whole thing, and it was one of the more relatable. Well, they were all mostly relatable, but it was a tragic one to me. It's probably one of the most tragic ones. And then I don't really have much to say about it more than that, in all honesty. And then there's Alan Shore's. Alan Shore's, oh my goodness. There were some parts of that one that pissed me off, but not enough that it really, significantly impacted my interest in it. Although the ship shit could have been done less so, but it is what it is. And then his was alright. The ship shit I didn't like as much as other things, but Alan Shore's was probably the least interesting, actually, because he has a thing where he's afraid of the dark and you have all the ships and all that, but I don't know. The whole theme of it, the beach, the ships, I just didn't find it to be that engaging. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about than that. As for Max Nygaard's, the sunny thing was a different thing in and of itself. It was a nice thing to see a sunny location. And then the main point of Max's tape was to craft the lure pills, which seems really contrived at the fact that once you construct them, you just have pills lying around like any other fucking item. So, like, I don't. It really took down the significance to me of Max's tape. Like, I wish that the lure pills were something you only got once to that one machine, and then, like, you use them in a boss fight, and that's it. I wish it was like that, because then it would actually feel impactful. But, like, the fact that you can just pick them up willy-nilly once you create them the first time makes the whole thing seem redundant to me. So, I place much less emphasis on Max. It's one of the reasons why Max's is the least fun for me, because most of his feels just meaningless. And then I enjoyed Lucas's. I enjoyed the environments and all that. The PTSD segments where you have the helmets on on the sticks and all that was interesting. But his was also very much like Max's, where Max's, the main point of it was to make the lure pills. With Lucas's, the main point of it was to find the code. That took up most of it. But once you find the code, that's all there is to it. Like, you don't just find codes lying around the place. So I'm more so fine with his. The main point of his was that one chase, like I already mentioned. And I already mentioned my sheer dislike of that one during the gameplay with my profanity raced rant. I mean, my profanity raced rant. My profanity laced rant. There we go. That one was not the best. But aside from those Iron Giant chases, it was, I'd say, the second most likable as far as gameplay goes. And you find out a lot more about too. The only missed opportunity I would say, well, it's not a missed opportunity. So realistically, you could put Rosemary Jones, if they make a sequel to this game, Rosemary Jones might end up being a big part of the sequel, because she's a part of all this too. Now, I get why she wasn't a tape, because she didn't go to see Desmond Wells as a therapist, but she's still a part of the whole thing, so I think she'll play a much bigger part in a possible sequel. So I think that's pretty much all for the tapes. Very succinct. I honestly just don't... It's difficult to talk about detailed things like that. So now let's go on to two more things. Agent Rainbow's tape, and then the hub. Agent Rainbow's tape, as far as gameplay goes, extremely underwhelming. I didn't really care for it. It was alright, I guess. Meh. As far as narrative goes, it was also pretty underwhelming. I am you! Ha 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 ha. That was basically the gist of it. Very underwhelming. I assume that Agent Rainbow was basically Desmond ever since you discovered that Tanya was his actual cat and now she's talking to him. I assume he went crazy. And I assume he went crazy because, well, talking to his therapist. Therapists get therapists as far as I know. Straight up. So, makes sense to me. So the revelation wasn't that big of a deal to me. The gameplay was very underwhelming to me, especially that one part where you have to activate 4 points in order to get the 4 lights active. That one was a pain in my ass. But I won't count that too much against the game because that was my fault for not noticing until the very end. And then the hub wasn't very big, but the hub didn't have to get. The hub did its job. It was 3 floors. Each one had, different obstacles, crates, Agent Rainbow, strips of tape that don't come off unless you cut them. And they all become more and more available as you progress through the game through these tapes. The hub, I 100% am totally fine with. So now that I've talked about each aspect of the game, well, let me talk about the game as a whole. Starting with... Actually, I could have probably put these in the tapes, but I'll start with the characters themselves. Virginia Rule... I consider Virginia Rule to be the most tragic, and here's why. So all these guys, every single one of them relates to Agent Rainbow and Meyer Pharmaceuticals. Here's the thing though, Virginia Rules works even without Meyer Pharmaceuticals directly, because her thing, that she was so upset because of the fact that, she had to go to a more crowded, place. dude, and like that could happen to anyone I mean the change happened because of Agent Rainbow, but that could have happened regardless, like in any real scenario. Alan Shores, that's more of a conspiracy theory thing, right? It is. And it's directly connected to Agent Rainbow. Pretty out there. Not in terms of the game, but in terms of like what could be feasible realistically. And then Max's could have also happened to anyone, but his deals with anger, and okay, out of all emotions, I dislike anger. I really don't like anger. Even though I've expressed it myself, obviously, but I don't like anger. It's an emotion, I hate it. As far as Lucas's goes, the most interesting part of his, his was also conspiracy theory, just like Alan Shore's was, but his got mixed up with the PTSD thing. But the main thing they talked about with his, the way they went over the PTSD thing with his, was to have the segments where the sky turns red, helmets on sticks, barbed wire everywhere, and shooting. That's like the main way they did that for Lucas's thing. Overall, if I had to rank the tapes, like the characters within, from top to worst, I'd say that Virginia is the best one. And then I would say Virginia would be followed by Lucas, followed by Alan, followed by Max. So other things though. Let's go ahead and talk about the level designs in and of themselves. Homamart, well done. I enjoyed Homamart. Alan Shores, I didn't really care for some parts of it, like all the hills and all that, didn't really care for it. The ships were pretty good, the beach is well enough done, the lighthouse is pretty well done, but all the hills and stuff I didn't really care for. As far as Max's goes, unremarkable. That's the only word I can use for it. Except for the quarry. The quarry at the very end was actually entertaining. It was like a battlefield, but the rest of it was very unremarkable. And then, as far as the last one, Lucas's, I really loved his. Okay, as far as level designs themselves goes, okay, I love his as far as like the overall theme goes, but his is probably my least favorite in terms of layout, because a majority of his, because of the way, I mean, the way it's broken down is, go here, find the code, go here, find the code. But because of the way it's broken down is that it's 4 points that are kind of not near each other, but so all it is 1 point, then a big path, a big street to get in a chase. So like you just got 1 point, you go from it's like driving a car. You go from point A to point B to point C to point D with a big road in between each one. But in each road you get chased by a giant machine. Yeah, as far as overall level design go, Lucas is definitely my least favorite. So here's for another one. Another thing is overall narrative. For the overall narrative, so Agent Rainbow is a part of it, but it's not even the main point. The main point is the characters, which I enjoy because all the characters relate directly back to the main point, which is Agent Rainbow. But Agent Rainbow itself is touched upon, but it's only basically the side character here. So as far as narrative goes, the narrative it's really two things. It's one, a setup for a sequel, and two, it's the character narrative. Like, the main point of this game's narrative is the characters, and how Meyer Pharmaceuticals / Agent Rainbow affected each one of them. That's this game's plot. And I think it was, I'm not going to go over it, like summarize it, because just play the game or watch it, but I think it was very well done. So kudos to the narrative. The only part of the narrative that I will criticize is the ending. Now, like I said in the beginning, this is a low resource indie game, but I still kind of expected a better ending than just a little bit of talking and then credits. It was very underwhelming, very anticlimactic, and because of that, okay, I'm not expecting like the biggest ending in the world with like crazy bombs and shit. In fact, that wouldn't have gone along with this game. but something other than what we got. I mean, I gotta admit, it was underwhelming to hell, the ending for this game. By God. That's the only part that I dislike is the ending. I don't know. It could have been far better done, as far as I'm concerned. It was really just cheap, in my opinion. So the ending was garbage, but the rest of it, everything else on it was good. So now, with the gameplay was good enough, honestly. My only issue, so like the parkour for what was there was good. Most of the game was honestly just running around and killing enemies. The running around was good enough. I'm not going to complain about the lack of being able to sprint faster or longer because that's on me for not picking up the pills like I said earlier. Because you can upgrade your stats. So the running around is good to go. The rest of it is basically combat, and then the combat does good because it gives you sufficient things. My only issue with the combat is that I think they should have given you a better weapon to use starting with Max Nygaard's level, because that's when you get introduced to those big guys, the ones that do the ground slams. I really wish that they would have given you a better weapon starting with Max's thing. The radio works against them well, but that's not an option until Lucas is. So for Max, there's a whole level where there's an enemy where you're underprepared. So for that part of it, I gotta take it a point down. But other than that, though, the gameplay was pretty stellar for what this game required. So now, let's get to one more thing: the atmosphere. Two more things. One is the atmosphere. I have no complaints about this game's atmosphere. The graphics could be better, but indie game, so I'll forgive it. The sound is pretty damn good. The music is impeccable. And the environments and rain and everything else is fantastic. The sound effects are good. So okay, is this game on the level of, let's say, I don't know, the Horizon games? Not Forza, but the Aloy ones. Or is it as good as, let's say, like, I don't know, the Medium? No. Compared to games like that, this game's atmosphere is honestly kind of a piece of shit. Here's the thing, though, except for the music. Here's the thing, though. For what it is, and for the resources these guys had, they did a damn fine job on it. So I'm still gonna give it a good letter for this game. For what this game is, it has a very good atmosphere, impeccable in fact. So here's my one last issue with it, and after that I'll get to the final words. This game is labeled as, and touts itself as, a psychological horror game. I take issue with that. Here's why. This game is not a horror game in like any sense of the word. Now, I'm not expecting something like Amnesia: The Dark Descent, because that's hardcore. But maybe, I don't know, even like Outlast level? Maybe not even Outlast level, that's pretty hardcore too. But I'm expecting some kind of scare factor here. That is not what you get with this game. There were exactly 2 points when I got scared in this game. One of them was during Max Nygaard's thing with the conveyor belt part, which, by the way, actually pissed me off. But that was only terrifying. I compare it to Marta during the playthrough for Outlast 2. But that was only terrifying for about 1 minute before I got over it, because of the way it was handled. Which partly probably has to do with the fact that this game seems like it's like painted. Like half this game's like environments seem like they're painted. This game does not have, okay, as much as I just praise this game's atmosphere for what it is, its atmosphere does not do well for horror, straight up. If there's a scary part like Max Nygaard and the conveyor belt, it immediately gets taken down by its own atmosphere. It's not scary. And then the other part, there was a part where I got startled. I don't remember what it was anymore, but I'll mention it if I remember. But the only reason why that part even scared me is because I wasn't expecting it. I remember that. And that's pretty much it. Now, so what would I have done? Well, personally, I would have classified this game as an adventure/puzzle game. Because that's basically what this game is. It's an adventure game. This game is not scary. Does that mean it's not a good game? No, I think it is a good game. But it's not a psychological horror game, so please don't call it that. I would have still done a playthrough on it if it was labeled as adventure/puzzle, because it would have been more truthful, because that's what it is. And while I do prefer to do games that are horror oriented, I'm perfectly fine doing ones that aren't, such as the Tomb Raider. I love the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy. That wasn't horror in any way, and this one isn't either. So that's my two biggest gripes about this game. One is the ending was kind of crap, and two, this is not psychological horror, so don't call it that. That's pretty much it. So I already have a letter grade in mind. I'm gonna give this game a final letter grade. I overall I enjoyed this game a lot, despite its shortcomings. So what I'm gonna do, with everything that I just mentioned in mind, taking into account every positive, every negative, I'm gonna give this game. When I give a letter grade, I go from A to F. A for awesome, F for fuck you to the game. I don't do the S tier. I give this game an A minus. Not an A, but an A minus. And so that's pretty much it. And that's it. So this has been In Sound Mind. Two parts of it were kind of a letdown, but other than that, I enjoyed it. And if there's a sequel, I will damn sure end up playing it. But that's it. So thank you for watching, and have a nice day.